difficult. The most difficult for us because it affects people. And so Steve is where the rubber meets the road. We will take some report outs as best we can, but I assure you that whatever you've written down this evening, we will be reading tomorrow and going through it. I know we have a young lady over there who's ready to speak first. We'll move around. One suggestion, if you don't aim your microphone to the ceiling, because that's where the speakers are, and that's what causes that feedback. Thank you.
Hi, my name is...
Just imagine you're at a rock concert.
My name is Julia Morielli, and I'm a 7th grade student at Hamburg Middle School. I would like to speak about the music program. I was very sad to hear that one of my favorite music teachers, Mrs. Hartman, may lose her position at my school due to budget cuts. I'm a member of the 7th and 8th grade honors chorus and select strings, and I also participate in the school musical. Our select groups had the opportunity to perform at school concerts, art festivals, excel at ECMEA auditions, and this May we are entering a competition in Ohio. We willingly practice before and after school because of our love for music. Select groups would never have these opportunities to represent Hamburg Middle School without the dedication of our wonderful teachers, Mrs. Mahalik, Mrs. Weeder, Mr. Maranglia, and Mrs. Hartman. They make being in these select groups more enjoyable. I am a member of the National Junior Honor Society in my school and truly believe music builds academic strength. According to a nationwide Gallup organization survey, music is a key component in a student's well-rounded education, making us smarter, helping us to perform better in other subject areas, and help teach discipline. Music training stimulates our mind and increases our brain power. Cuts in the music and art programs have shown a decrease in school attendance and an increase in gang activity, harmful situations, or vandalism. Students who perform, experience, or appreciate music score higher on their SATs. Select Music Program is a group where students who love music can really enjoy singing or playing an instrument. For myself, I enjoy the select groups because I can share my passion in music with friends who love it as much as I do. Please do not eliminate our select music program. It is a vital part of our education here in Hamburg School Districts.
I'm not at all biased. When you're 3 months from retirement, you have to do those things. We have someone back here.
Hi, my name is Sarah Cousins. I'm a health teacher in the district. And we keep hearing talk about impact on students and trying not to eliminate programs, but there are programs being cut. If you look at the high school level, if the proposed cut for the health department goes through, which we've already in the past few years have gone from 9 teachers down to, if these cuts go through, 4.6. And if it continues, we could be down to 2.6. You're going to see the elimination of life skills, stress management, and nutrition. All programs that are offered to our students. It's my understanding that these proposals were created by the building principal, and I'd like to know what the criteria were for these and how it's decided by one person and how does that work? How do you decide what gets cut and what gets cut?
Well, again, the decisions were made, we looked at the administration of the various buildings to get some feedback for us. The proposals here are being made by the building administration to us, and they took into consideration the same issues that we took into consideration in terms of any enrollment, et cetera. At the high school, it's much more difficult because of the reductions that have occurred over the last few years. That it's becoming more difficult to look at what areas can potentially be reduced without harming program. Unfortunately, one of the decisions we're faced with this year is what we can do to lessen the impact on reductions in program. That's what we're going to continue to study. As I said in the beginning, these are proposals at this point. I know that there will be some modifications to the proposals. I don't know to what extent everything will be modified, but that's something we'll be going through and looking at. But we know there is going to be impact on program and reductions in some of those areas.
Thank you. We have a bunch of different questions. if these are proposals, why were teachers given official layoff notices? And what do the retirements, how do they play into that? And if that is proposal one, what's the tax levy then would it be for that? Do we know what that is, or you don't know those numbers? And then the same with proposal two, what would that in turn make the tax levy for the town?
Okay, well, let me just respond to the first one. At the elementary level in particular, although they're looked at draft one proposals, those are more in effect than any other ones, because the class size we don't look at, we're not eliminating program, we're not reducing, or we're not impacting, hopefully significantly, what can take place in the classroom. So we believe that at the elementary level, we're increasing class size slightly. The impact should be perhaps, hopefully slight, but we believe we can make those changes without significant impact. So that's the reason at the elementary level that some of those notices were sent out. Our rationale for doing that was we wanted to give early notice to folks so that they could look for other employment, because we know that's going to be difficult.
So that's already given, they're gone.
At the elementary level, it looks like that is, I wouldn't know where to go beyond that. To increase, to add teachers back and to reduce class sizes below 20, I don't think is responsible to the taxpayer as well. So I think that's an area that can be reduced with relatively small impact on our program. Regarding the tax levy, Barb will get into the tax levy at our next session. You'll be able to see where we are with the current tax levy. And then keep in mind that any additional percentage is just about $300,000. So for every $300,000 increase is, that would be 1% on the tax levy.
You had the question of where do retirements fit into all this?
The retirements fit, depending on the levels. I believe we had four retirements at the elementary level, so that would offset those reductions by 4, the layoffs by 4.
Try this
My question was more around the elimination of the FTEs, and what is the plan to support the much lower staff, not just in the classrooms, but also things like buildings and maintenance, where we've already got a skeleton crew. How do we make sure that they're repairing things as they need to be repaired, so you don't have colossal meltdowns like a boiler just breaking in the middle of wintertime, so that they can do the general maintenance required to prevent big catastrophes. But also, how do you support the teachers? How do you make sure that the students are getting what they need when they've got more kids to pay attention to, focus on, they have maybe very different needs? So what is the plan so that both those areas don't suffer while we're grabbing this cost savings?
That's one of our significant challenges. When we're looking at, again, when we're looking at reductions in teaching staff, we're looking at trying to minimize the impact on program and students. We're going to do that in as best a way as possible. We don't have all the answers in terms of that impact, but we know we have to close a gap, and we know that unfortunately reductions have to take place. We're going to look to lessen the impact. As I said, I'm sure you'll see some modifications in the teacher reductions as you saw. Regardless of the area, whether it's clerical, whether it's teacher aid, whether it's computer aides, whether it's facilities personnel, all of those reductions are going to require us to restructure somewhat. How that restructuring is going to be is going to be determined once the final numbers are achieved in terms of what the budget can support versus what has to be reduced. It may be a reconfiguration of duties. It may be schedule changes in terms of reporting and ending times. We don't have the full answer to that because we don't have the end result yet. But we will put a plan in place that will address what the needs of the districts are to the staff that is there to have those needs. We know that we're going to feel a loss. There's no question about it. You can't make the reductions that are being proposed without feeling that in all areas.
My name is Kathy Mendez, and I'm an employee, 16-year employee of this district. I also represent the clerical staff in the district through the Teamsters Local 264. What I'd like to say is that you guys know us. We're the office ladies. We take care of your kids. We get their lunches to them when they forget them. We answer the phone. We help you in guidance. We do the attendance. But often we don't have much of a voice. We don't come to these meetings and make statements. But we felt the need today. We have a great working relationship with this district, and we always have. But if these potential cuts go through, as far as the phase 2, we will lose potentially 8 to 9 employees. If we get to that point, we will be half of what we were 15 years ago. Half the staff, still supporting all your children, all the teachers, still there when you guys come in with your lunches and all that stuff. Our concern is, how do we get all that done? What we're going to work for you guys as hard as we can.
Hi, my name is Chris Hawk, and I represent the Special Education PTA here in Hamburg. And I happen to be the parent of some children with some special needs. And when I look at the proposals here, I feel like children who have special needs, it's going to be gutted. Because there are many children who have IEPs who are supported in classrooms that aren't pulled out, and we're talking 6 aides. Those are the people that support some of these children that nobody knows about who have IEPs. Behavior management is going to be handled here. By who? How are we going to support that? Because our children who have behavior management issues, and that is their disability, are going to become stigmatized to the rest of the children and staff. We're talking about cutting counselors. Are you kidding me? That's their emotional support. Unacceptable. How are these teachers going to support our children who are mainstreamed in classrooms in larger classes with no aides? And how are you going to support possible lawsuits when their IEPs are not followed because these teachers can't do it all? I would further just like to request that some of the parents who can't be here because of the severity of their children's special needs be given consideration to speak to this board at another time that's more, that they can do it. Be it today, maybe we do it 2 times, one in the evening, one during the day. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Colleen to address the piece on the aides, just that you're familiar with all the special education areas.
Our classroom aides that Chris is discussing is referring to, we have students with special needs that are supported in our gen ed classrooms with classroom aides. We are not reducing those classroom aides. We have other aides in the district that are non-special ed related, and those are where we're looking at some of the reductions. Whether it be a reading aide, whether it be a library media specialist aide, but we're not looking to reduce our students with special needs, the support that they have in the classroom. So we're not looking to reduce that.
I have just one other quick thing that I forgot, that I just want to, when I looked at this, and it may not be popular with people, but when I look at the cuts here, and we're talking about $50,000 to athletics, that's it?
Yeah.
There are children, we are a very rich community in recreation, and my children participate in athletics, and I know there's rules that govern all of that as well. But $50,000 in athletics, when we're talking about children's academics and how they are educated to go on in community and be productive citizens, I don't know, I have a problem with that.
Hi, I'm Jean Gunner, a mom. I'm part of Season Living Education, helped found, I was the founder, one of the founders of that. And you guys have covered so much today, but I just want to say a couple things. Number one, I have such a great group here, and we have one of the principals from Armor, and she's just awesome. I want to recognize that there's kids here today, students, because I think that speaks for they're courageous and they're daring and they're the future. And I think we always need to acknowledge that they're here sharing this with us. I want to say something, and it's going to probably be unpopular both to administration and management and also to the teachers. But I'm going to say it anyway because we brought it up. Because this is an unpopular subject. I mean, there's budget gaps here. What I want to say is it takes incredible leadership to do what you all do all the time, the volunteer board. And I think we all need to share the pain here. It has to be the teachers. We have to look. I know unions govern this and there's contracts, and I'm very much in support of the worker, the common everyday worker, because that's what I am. I live paycheck to paycheck. I don't have a fund balance. I just don't. And a lot of us in the United States do not. And if we think back, remember, this has a lot to do with the losses that Wall Street experienced a number of years back, and it impacted the state, it impacted the Fed, it impacted all of our pocketbooks. But one of the things we came up with is not only does maybe we need to look at freezes and some reductions at the teacher end and solidarity of the teachers to save the jobs, because there's faces and names behind all of these people losing their jobs, with the custodian staff and the grounds and the teachers, et cetera, but also we have to look at cuts at administration level. There have to be cuts there. They're just due, because, I mean, I am in management at my end, the work I do in the pediatric world, and we have to take cuts too. So we all have to share in the grief and the pain. It's hard, but maybe there needs to be more job sharing. Maybe we need to look at a regional approach to the way we manage school districts. You know, there have to be answers here. It can't be, you know, that we're cutting arts programs and music programs, and I'm also one to be more interested in the academics and the sports. I think sports are wonderful and very important. But we want to know specifically a little bit more about the $860,000 more or less in salary increases at the teacher end, where the breakdown is for that. And then also we had a question if 6 more retirements came through, if we could tease out more retirements, because the truth is, when you lose the new talent, and all talent is good. There's the wisdom of many years of being an experienced and seasoned teacher, and then there's the talent that comes from being energized as a new teacher in the profession. We have to have a balance there. I know this is a bigger issue than our district can solve, but we want to look at the issue with salary increases, and also we want to see the shared pain that can come at the administration and in the superintendent's office level. So that's what we have to say. Thank you.
Let me just try to break down the information that you asked for in terms of the salary information. For the administrators unit, Hamburg Administrative Council, we do have a tentative agreement with the administrators that calls for a wage freeze for 2012-13. So there would be no increase from that perspective. The rollover, if you take current employees and roll them over from a teacher aide standpoint, it's about $75,000. From a maintenance standpoint, it's about a little over $40,000. From a teacher standpoint, it's just under $700,000. Central office is under a wage freeze for next year. There is no step increase for clerical personnel as well. So that's where you see the salary increases there. And that go along, whatever goes along with salary increases are the retirement costs plus FICA costs that get added on to those.
I'm looking for maybe 1 or 2 more that is different than what we've already heard.
One is it true that one of the board members is also part of the Finance Academy board?
Yes, we do have a board member that's on the Finance Academy.
That's all I need to know.
Yep.
Because it's kind of funny that in the 3 years of cuts, Not one position's been cut from the business program.
Let me just say that Mr. Carpy was cut from last year to this year. He retired, that was
He retired.
But that was
He didn't get cut.
well, it's a
Okay.
reduction.
Right.
Just if I could, one of the parts I'd like here is let's not make this personal. We can
That's
keep
fine.
it on
I
a
take
level of
it
reduction,
personally, I
okay?
take it personally because my wife lost her job last year. She's not losing it this year, but I still hate to see people lose their jobs, okay? The fact that one person is making a decision on program cuts, and again, the whole life skills program has been decimated, you have no idea, your kids need these teachers to talk to. They're not going to the business teachers to talk to. They're not going to the, I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna use examples, art teachers. They're coming to these people who deal with the everyday problems that these teenagers have. And you cut that, they got no one to speak to. I don't care how close you think you are to your children, parents. They come to me as a hockey coach and talk to me about their problems also. Whether it's girls, drinking, drugs, whatever it may be, because they just feel embarrassed talking to their parents sometimes. I hate to say that, but it's true. And my daughter, I'm sure, does the same thing. My 3 daughters will do the same thing. They'll talk to somebody else. And I wish that they've had this table here to talk to in this school district. I brought my kids to this school from Catholic school because I heard what a great district this was. And then I sit there and I see all these cuts. It embarrasses me, okay? The other thing, you're talking about cutting sports programs. I don't have a problem with that, you brought that up. I coach, I make money from this program as an assistant coach for the varsity hockey team. I've been involved when it was a club team for 15 years before you made a school sport. You want to cut me my salary, I'll be more than happy to go back and volunteer in, okay? That's what, I have no problem with cutting sports. But if you're going to cut $50,000 out of sports, the budget, and you're going to cut the life skills program, how much money is the AD losing? He runs that program, is he going to cut his salary? 10% across the board on the sports, and you're going to cut all these salaries of the people that work underneath him? He's got less work to do, that should equal less pay. Thank you.
There's just a couple things that I would like to say on behalf of myself and my peers and also the future students through Hamburg. I have been a student through Hamburg ever since I attended Charlotte Avenue through the middle school and the high school. And I do understand the sacrifices that we do have to make through every parts of the budget, and I understand that it's not just supposed to be cuts from this section or this section, but I'd just like to say that there have been many experiences that I've had through not only sports teams, but music departments, business departments, health departments that have made me grow into the person I am today, especially the music department. Sorry. I would just like for you all to recognize the level of excellence that you all have brought, and the experience, especially for high school, through the music department, just to point out, has really given me a huge aspect on life. And I'm not sure if you're able to recognize it. Just having the opportunities to go to Florida, to have my friends go to Japan, to be able to go to Washington, and this year New York. It's not, Hamburg is known, especially for the music department, all over the state. Especially when I hear, when we go to New York and other teachers from all over the state say, oh, you're that chorus from Buffalo. And I would just not, I'm just not trying to point out the music department, but also even the sports teams. Having the opportunity to go to sectionals numerous times for field hockey,
having to have, especially our DECA, be able to go to nationals. And just to point out the fact that there is just a level of excellence throughout Hamburg that I feel like you should be able to maintain through this budget cut, and to just be able to recognize how much it does affect us as students. Because if you look at the top 10 students ranked in each class, majority of them are involved in extracurricular activities. But I'm just saying, music isn't mandatory. But I'm just saying the subjects that aren't mandatory, the top students do participate in, and it does teach us life skills. Yeah, thank you.
I assure you, we know, we get it. Not just the music department, all these projects, programs. We all have feelings. I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit, but again, age has we do get it. That's why this is so hard. Because I watched you grow up, and I know what you've done. And it's very difficult, very emotional, very hurtful. And we're looking for a solution. That's what we need. That's what we need on your papers tonight. Something that maybe we haven't thought of yet.
We have one more session for comments, so we'll still have another opportunity for comments after this, the third session.
I have to leave, but I just want to say one thing about the music portion of this, is that it's a known fact. Children that play instruments or involved in chorus, it broadens their horizons, it opens doors for them, and you look into studies as far as a child that does that and doesn't do that, and it's very helpful for them to have that in their life.
Thank you. The last session we're going to present now is on the tax levy limit. So Barb Spores is going to show you where we are with the levy limit and what happens with the proposed levy limit as we move forward.
There is an 8-step calculation that we're required to. There is an 8-step calculation on how to calculate your tax levy limitation. As one of the gentlemen asked earlier, can everybody hear me? No.
Talk louder.
I'll do my best to talk louder, but I have a voice problem, so louder sometimes is just like cheap speakers, it just gets even more distorted, but I'll do my best to be louder. We submitted our tax levy limitation calculation to the state on March 1st as we were required. And I just want to go over briefly what the tax levy limitation really is. I know everybody's heard about it in the paper. It's called a 2% tax cap. That really is not what it is. It's an unfortunate description. The 2% is part of the calculation. It's an 8-step calculation. And you can see here how you calculate it. You basically take your current year tax levy, that's the levy we have this year. You multiply it times this tax-based growth factor, which was provided to us by the state, which is supposed to represent what they feel as though our growth and assessment has been. You have to do a couple of calculations where you add in pilots. As I discussed earlier, those are payments in lieu of property tax. and subtract out current year exemptions, and I will explain what those are on the next slide, which brings us to our adjusted current year levy. Next, you'll actually see where the 2% calculation comes in. As I said, it's only part of the whole calculation. You multiply the current year levy by the 2%. You subtract out the pilots for the upcoming year, which is an estimate, and you get a tax levy limit. So it's not a simple calculation, and every school district's tax levy limit is going to be different. There are certain exclusions from the tax levy limitation. Basically, the concept was there's certain expenses that we can't control, so they would be excluded from the calculation. Unfortunately, they only excluded a couple of the things we can't control. One of them is what they call the capital tax levy, which really is any capital project or building project that the school district has participated in, which we have not received funding for from the state, which they call building aid, that we have to pay our proportionate share with local taxpayer dollars. That is exempt from the calculation. So we have an exemption of $773,219 from the levy limit. This is for a project that was already voted on by the voters and approved. So now we have to go back to the voters and say, you already approved it, now we have to include this in your levy so we can pay our debt service bill. They also included contributions and pension costs, which are 2% greater than last year, meaning this year. The way the calculation works out, that does not include the teacher's retirement. That would only include the employee's retirement, and that's worth $41,000. So if you add them together, our exclusion is $814,697. You just take that number and add it to the number on the previous slide, and our total tax levy limit with exclusions is $31,803,224. Now, what that number really means to everybody is that as long as we don't exceed that number, we only need to have 50% of the voters plus one approve our budget. If we are going to exceed that number, we need to have 60% of the voters who vote that day approve the budget. That's really what the tax levy limitation is all about. It determines the level of positive votes you have to have in order to pass your budget. The 2% is only merely part of the calculation, but they really like to use that because it makes it very interesting. Unfortunately, what it does is it misleads everybody. So you're going to see every school district's tax levy limit be completely different, and most all of them are going to be well over 2%. One of the things we have to look at is approximating your fund balance for 11-12. And this was one of the questions that came up. Our unexpended appropriations, I am estimating to be left over at the end of this year's budget, is $1.7 million. Our revenue, I believe, is somewhat overstated. I don't think we're going to quite see all the revenue we had hoped to see. So once you subtract that off, we're estimating that we're going to have approximately $1.1 million left at the end of the school year. Of that, we can determine what to do with it. We've always expended some of it towards the real property tax levy as a revenue. That way we can manage the levy and ask the taxpayers for less. This past fiscal year, I should rephrase it, this tax year, your last tax bill had a revenue from the school district in the amount of $1.7 million as a real property tax levy contribution. And we're not going to have that. Simple math's going to show you that there's not going to be 1.7 to offset the levy. So we're really looking at something more like $750,000 to designate to reduce the levy, leaving us with an undesignated fund balance of only $385,000. So the question is, do we have a lot of fund balance that we could be appropriating? The answer is no, we don't. We have a little bit. It's well under what we're allowed to carry by law. We're allowed to carry 4% of the upcoming fiscal year's budget. Quick math will tell you 4% of $56 million is now $385,000. So when I'm saying that we need to work towards incrementally rebuilding it, now you can see why. If you took our rollover budget gap that we started with, that we spoke about earlier, and subtracted off where we think we may end up with draft one reductions and retirement savings, and bear in mind that these are estimates, our numbers aren't hard yet because they're proposals, but we need to try to figure out, what our levy might look like. We would see that our budgetary savings would be $3.1 million. This is where you have to realize that you have to look at not only the expenses, but the revenues, because if you just looked at this, you would say our net budget gap would only be $424,000. But you have to look at what the upcoming year's revenues look like. Our projected revenues for 12-13 are $23,603,338, and that takes into account sales tax, state aid, charges for services, interest, fees, pretty much everything that we think we may actually receive money for. If we appropriate $750,000 out of what we're projecting our fund balance to be at the end of the school year, we'll have $24,353,338 as our total revenues to offset the upcoming budget. Our projected budget, based on phase one reductions and some retirements, and as I said, it's a projection, would be just over $57 million. Subtract off the revenue, and as I said, this is really where the tax levy becomes a basic calculation. Take your expenses, you subtract off your revenue, and what you're short is your levy, and that's what you spread over all of the townships and ask the taxpayers to pay. Now, a couple slides ago, I showed you what our tax levy limit with exclusions, our limit was. That is $31,803,224. So easy math shows you our resulting tax levy based on where we are right now is greater than what we're allowed if we only want to require 50% of the vote plus one. So we're still short somewhere in the neighborhood of $874,000. Now we're hopeful that we're going to receive a little bit more state aid. So we have on our side here proposed 1% restoration, $150,000, which would have our budget gap be somewhere around $723,000. The one thing we did want to talk about a little bit, this is something that really hasn't been discussed, is we're trying to get a feel for what the community and the Board of Education, what their thoughts are regarding exceeding the tax levy limitation. We can clearly exceed that, but we would require 60% of the voters to vote positively for our budget. If everybody votes 60%, if we put the proposition out there to exceed the property tax levy limitation and request the adoption by 60% of the voters, it's for 1 year. So for the next year, it doesn't mean that that's what it would be. Every year is an individual year. So whatever the decision is this year to try to exceed it or not would be just for 12-13. If we are successful in exceeding the tax levy limitation and the voters vote to approve that budget, the amount levied becomes next year's base amount. So whatever your levy is this year becomes your base amount for next year and each subsequent year forward. If we put a budget out there that we believe the voters are going to approve and we know would require 60% or greater approval rating, and we do not get it, then the district has the opportunity to do what we've had to do in the past. We can put a second budget out. You can put the exact same budget out there if you want. If you think maybe it just didn't have a good enough explanation and maybe enough people didn't understand it and therefore it was voted down. Or you can choose to put out a completely different budget that still exceeds and would require 60% of the vote. Or you could say, based on the board's decision and the superintendent's direction, that clearly the community doesn't want to support a budget that would require 60% voter approval, then we could put out another budget that would only require 50% plus one. We would have to be under that levy limitation. Either way, whatever we choose to do, if that budget is subsequently defeated, then we're going to find ourselves in a position where we have to adopt a contingent budget. It's different than what we used to have to do. A contingent budget in the past meant there were limitations on how much we could put into the expenditure budget, and certain expenses had to come out of the budget. What that really means this year is that whatever our tax levy is currently in fiscal year 11-12, that will be what our levy is in 12-13. So you could see that if this actually does happen to us or any other school district, the impact at the end of May will be, there will be a significant budget gap that now by law we have no choice to otherwise reduce our expenditures to meet. Since we have no fund balance to utilize, that would mean we would have to cut staff even further. So the passing of the budget is now, I don't want to say it's more important than ever, but the consequence of a failed budget is more dire than it ever has been. And that is one of the things that we want to make sure that our taxpayers understand, that we want to really try to put a budget out there that is going to be supported, because the lack of support or even no votes means in the end what you're going to end up with for whatever reason you voted no is probably more dire than the reason you voted no. So, I think that was my last slide, and I will pass this back to the superintendent.
Okay, thank you, Barb. We'd like to again move on to talk about now with this, the levy limit. The information that Barb presented is a percentage increase of approximately 4.5% on the levy. So under the current scenario of going to the tax levy limit, we would be asking the voters to approve a levy increase of 4.5%. Last year we asked for about 6.45%. I haven't seen any other district in Erie County over a 4% mark at this point. Most are coming well under 4% for their levy limit. As Barb explained, ours is increased because of the debt service we're incurring on our new capital project. But what we'd like to have now is on the purple sheet of paper, your table, talk about the levy limit that's coming down here. Talk about what you see and discuss about the impact of exceeding or staying within the cap and what those results might be. Let's take about 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll report out again. Thank you.